all of a sudden the narcissist will just ghost you. They'll use you and use you, and you feel good about this. I'm really helping this ministry. The moment you're not available, it's as though you didn't exist.
You're listening to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall.
And I'm Missy Randall.
We're here each week exploring the intersection of faith and culture.
We find people who stand up, speak out, and step forward
for inclusion, freedom, and justice for all.
It's time for Good Faith Weekly.
Brought to you by Good Faith Media. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to catch up. We're also going to talk about Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show. And then we're also going to talk about a vigil that we attended in Dallas, Texas this week outside an ICE facility. Then later on the pod, Missy and I sat down with Becky Garrison, who's got a new book out titled Gaslighting for God, a Satirical Guide to Save Yourself from Spiritual Narcissist. It's a good pod, so stay tuned. Hello there, Missy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
Well, I am basking in the glow of victory.
You had a hard-fought win this weekend.
Know. Fair weather fans like me are just still riding the high of the Super Bowl win for the Seattle Seahawks.
When you say riding high, it's about maybe 6 inches off the ground.
I mean, I got to cling to something these days, right? We talked about microdosing joy, so right. There you go.
Yeah.
This is going to be the last week I can kind of ride on that. So
that's right. Football season is officially over.
Yes. And I'm totally cool with that, by the way. But yeah, so we had a good time watching the Super Bowl.
We did. Had a great time.
I don't know if you've heard or not, but there was a little halftime show that sparked a little bit of controversy.
Well, what I really heard was that there was a concert that was scheduled for Sunday night, and then a football game broke out around the concert.
Pretty much. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, we're referring to Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime performance. You guys have read a bazillion things online, I'm sure, unpacking and critiquing or celebrating this performance. I don't feel like we have too much to add, but we do want to talk a little bit about it.
Yes, we do. We, again, had a great time watching the football game and the commercials. But the highlight, to be honest with you, of the entire night was Bad Bunny's performance at the Super Bowl halftime show. I didn't know what to expect. I knew he was going to do something spectacular, but it just took my breath away. I mean, last year's was really good with Kendrick Lamar.
Right.
I mean, I love Kendrick, and the symbolism and everything that went into that performance was remarkable. I think Bad Bunny may have outdid Kendrick Lamar, and that's saying something because it was remarkable.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Following last year's Super Bowl performance, you went online and bought tickets to go see Kendrick Lamar.
I did.
And we got to go see him with our sons in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Does this mean you will be purchasing Bad Bunny tickets?
I don't know. I'll have to see. Maybe he's performing down in Puerto Rico. We could go down there and see.
Hey, I'm for it. But yeah, so we want to talk a little bit about, obviously, people who are critical of his performance, talking about, the language or whatever. And I just want to make kind of one point, which probably people have heard, but just in case you haven't. Explicit lyrics have been on recordings or on songs or on CDs or whatever forever.
Right.
I mean, we raised our children, and when they had a rap artist that they liked, when they were of an age, we bought the version of the CD or whatever that did not have the explicit lyrics. This is just what happens. My understanding, I could not understand his lyrics, I'll be honest, but my understanding is the lyrics that were performed during the Super Bowl were the PG or PG-13 rated lyrics.
Right.
So for people who are crying that, this was explicit, it was meant for a larger audience. So if you don't like the explicit lyrics, which I don't necessarily care for, don't buy that version.
Right. Yeah. So what you're referring to, there is some House Republicans this week that are asking the FCC to investigate Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show because of what they cite as explicit lyrics, even though there were none in that particular performance. On his albums, yes, but not in that performance. But then also, and I quote one of the representatives that said that the performance was vulgar and filthy. And so it was really really reprehensible of what these House representatives are trying to allude to. And I write about it in my article this week, the blindness of white eyes, because this isn't the first time that I've experienced this, Missy, as, especially white males look at women or individuals who have brown and black skin, people from other cultures, and they racialize them and they sexualize them, and then determine they are filthy. I remember one time I was in a doctorate of ministry class at Baylor University, and we were talking about different cultures. And we were talking about, in particular, Hispanic women coming to church and their dress. And one of the white ministers in that class talked about having to scold Latino women on their dress.
Oh, no.
I got so angry at that comment. I literally took the water bottle that I was drinking from and threw it across the room, not at the minister, but at the chalkboard. And I said, how dare you? How dare you sexualize these women? Because they are dressing according to their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it is nothing sexual. You are sexualizing it. You're racializing them. And it was just a reminder about how white eyes are blind to other cultures, and also just how steep they are in purity culture.
Right.
And it just drives me bananas.
So I want to talk a little bit more too about the performance itself. It was so vibrant and so engaging, and you could tell if you were someone from the culture,
You're
you
right.
would understand so many of the references. I think of it as inside jokes.
Oh, yeah,
and it
yeah.
was so I've really enjoyed reading and learning about all those things.
Yeah.
But it reminded me when I was in my very early 20s, in the early days of blogging, when the mommy bloggers were kind of a big thing. I used to read this woman who was she was Jewish. And she talked about, it was kind of in the beginning of the internet getting crazy about saying Merry Christmas versus Happy Holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, while I wouldn't say I was against any of that. I was still in a stage where I was feeling a little bit threatened by the other, because that's all I had been taught. They're going to, the other is going to take over our culture or whatever. And she wrote a post about Christmas that as a Jewish person, she loves to be included in Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I love to go and celebrate that with other people. She said, here, I don't have any of the stress.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the planning. I just get to go and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I get to go celebrate this with people.
Right.
And that kind of, I wouldn't say it completely changed my thinking, but it has impacted my thinking to this day of how we approach others who celebrate or who embrace or who practice their faith or their culture or whatever differently than us. Why can't we go and enjoy and appreciate it? I loved the show. I enjoyed it. I appreciated it. I didn't understand it all, but I got invited and I didn't have to do any of the prep.
Yep.
So that's a win.
And let me echo that, because, I too am not a Spanish speaker. I did not understand a vast majority of what Bad Bunny was singing about, but I did hear him.
Oh, 100%.
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
And for me, there were two moments, and I'll be really brief about this, that stood out. One is when he handed the Grammy to that little boy, which symbolized the continuation of generational culture and the handing down awards to the next generation, and just the empowerment of that single moment. On the flip side of it, it was a critique about our current president, who likes to receive rewards instead of give awards. And so yeah, that was a really important moment. But then at the end, when he says, "God bless America," and then they name all the countries in America. Being American is so much more than being a citizen of the United States.
Right.
It is a culture. It is a celebration of different cultures. It is being a part of the symbiotic relationship with other people. And Bad Bunny expressed that better than anybody I've seen in a long time.
It was so powerful.
Yep. It was just so powerful.
So yes, while Sunday was a lot of fun,
we enjoyed
the game and the performance. On Monday, you and I had another experience that we kind of want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
I think in part because we're both still processing.
Yeah, it was quite a 24-hour period we had there.
Right. So we were invited to go down to the Dallas Immigration and Border Customs Office. I don't know if that's the technical term.
Yeah.
Because a group of our friends and colleagues and many other clergy people gather there every Monday morning at 8 a.m. to stand out in front of the offices with signs in protest and solidarity and support of our immigrant neighbors and what's going on behind the walls of this office building.
Right.
And so they'd started this months ago. I've been wanting to go and experience this. And so we had this opportunity to do so. And it was amazing. On this day, the clergy folks, and you can kind of help me with the terminology here, they processed in with incense.
Yeah, the Episcopal bishop came in, and they came in processing with incense and singing. And really, it was just kind of this beautiful moment. And, it reminded me of my ancestors and the smudging process, the cleansing process of the aura around the facility. And I think that is what this Episcopal priest and his parishioners were. I think this is what they were attempting to do, to cleanse the aura or the spirits around this facility. It was really a beautiful, powerful moment.
It really was a powerful moment. So then everyone gathered around the front of the building. There was a responsive prayer read with the group. During the prayer, it was interesting to me that a riding lawnmower was sent out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, I did notice it.
On the drive. And I don't know
the
if
landscaping team.
The landscaping thing in February when there's no green grass, suddenly, and the lawnmower was on the pavement, not the grass, but he was just out there circling. And it wasn't lost on me that maybe that wasn't, accidental, that came out at that moment. But anyways, so then as the prayers concluded and things, and the crowd that was there, there was clergy, students, and others who were gathered there to protest and support those folks coming in for appointments, spread out. And what was so amazing to me is the number of cars driving by, and we're on I-35, major interstate. It's a busy time of day. The cars, the trucks, from semis to, broken down cars to luxury vehicles, people who were waving and honking in solidarity with the group there was really comforting and inspiring to know that, okay, there are people out there who get it.
Yeah.
We're not screaming into a void.
Right.
But there were two other vehicles I want to talk about, because as you were conducting interviews with people that will be released later on, I kind of stood along the access road because your camera equipment wasn't on the street, but it was close enough that I wanted to make sure that cars saw us. And, like you do when a stranded motorist comes, you kind of veer to the middle lane. And people were doing that. It's fine. But there were two SUVs who were in the center lane who veered right.
What color were
towards us.
What color were those SUVs?
They were black SUVs who had license plates in the dash, not on the car, who I feel like very intentionally in an intimidating posture veered towards us. And I got a little nervous, but I don't know. It was just, by and large, people were supportive, honking, waving, but those two instances just reminded me of what's really going on. But here's what I really want to talk about.
Okay.
After we experienced, the front side of the building with the clergy people, we were invited to go to the back side of the building. The back side of the building has an abandoned parking lot next to it. And there's a tent that is set up every single day.
Every day.
Every day this tent is set up, and there are signs that tell people.
Run by volunteers
Who alert people that if they have an appointment to check in at this facility, they need to stop and talk to the volunteers at the tent first.
And why is that?
So what happens at this building is that people who are here, who are immigrants, they have to do yearly check-ins. And what I am told is that in the past, this has been just a pretty procedural thing. You go in, you check in, it's kind of a paperwork thing, and then you go on about your merry way until your next appointment the next year. This is kind of just to check in and make sure, you're doing what you're supposed to do while you're waiting for your court appointment.
There you go. Yeah.
So they are following the law.
Exactly.
They are required to come to these appointments, check in. Okay, we're here. You're good. You rubber stamp. We'll let you know when your court date is.
Right.
This is the way I understand this facility to operate.
Right.
Obviously, things have changed now.
Yes.
So what we are told by the volunteers who organized their tent, I'll talk about that in a second, is that now the facility, the office there, Immigration Border Control or whatever, they are now required to detain 100 people per day. 100 people.
Per day.
There are estimated 150 appointments per day is what I was told by one volunteer. So do the math. So there's a good chance when you come in for your check-in appointment that you are not going to leave that building.
Yep.
So what these volunteers have done, is they set up a station where they are providing paperwork and resources for people before they go into their appointment. They get all of their information. They get a disclosure statement saying that you can contact my family should I not come out of the building, and help them kind of get things in order just in case they don't come out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a table for their children to sit and play. There are toys, snacks, coloring books, all sorts of things because a lot of these people, they show up maybe as a family and it's just like mom has an appointment. So the children stay outside, wait for her to go in and come back out. And then the volunteer helps them track through the legal system and how you locate your family, all the things they need to do. So while we were there was a gentleman, when we approached the tent, and I'm going to tell this story largely because you were doing camera work.
Sure,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
was trying to listen and just really bear witness to
Right.
what was going on. So there was a gentleman talking to a volunteer. He was in a suit and tie, looked like your average professional businessman, talking to one of the volunteers. I couldn't hear the conversation, but after she was done, she said that he had gone in for his appointment. He was able to leave. He came back out, but he alerted her that the man that walked in with him was being detained and basically go ahead and start contacting his family. But he also said that he had an ankle monitor on. It's unclear to me as to whether it was put on that day or whether he had already had it on. But that ankle monitor was going to now prohibit him from being able to do his job. I do not know what he does, but he does something in the field that deals with like missing children. So I'm assuming this means he has to travel, and now he can't travel. So now he cannot do his job because he has this ankle monitor on. But if he does his job and, alerts them that he's gone out of range, then he's in, I guess, not contempt, but then he's broken the agreement. So what is he to do? He's married to a U.S. citizen. I believe they have children. So his hands are tied.
Yeah.
So that was one situation. Another one that is just, it's haunting me. I'm not sleeping well because I cannot believe this is happening. But a woman showed up and she parked across the street and she was walking towards our tent, and that volunteer went and met with her. Again, I'm just on the sidelines. I didn't hear the conversation. When the volunteer came back, she let us know that the woman had just had a baby 2 days ago. 2 days ago.
Yeah.
That she had tried to call and postpone her appointment, but that they said no, she had to come in. So she leaves the hospital with her brand new baby to come to this appointment. She mentioned she is in pain from surgery. So I take that to mean she potentially had a C-section. It doesn't matter.
Right.
When you have a baby,
yeah,
there's healing to be done.
Absolutely.
There's pain involved, a lot.
Yeah. Nobody should be doing anything except rest 2 days after birth.
Right. But she had to get herself dressed and made up and come to this appointment.
Yeah.
So the volunteer was letting her know, listen, this is a possibility that you may get detained and whatever. And so she went in for her appointment with her 2-day-old baby. And all I could think about was this woman potentially being detained and being forced to sit on a cement floor with her baby after she has given birth. And let me tell you, for any of you out there who have given birth, you cannot sit on a cement surface for a good little bit after you've had that experience. I don't know what happened to this woman. I don't know if she came out or not. But this is sickening. It is disgusting.
Yeah.
And it is not okay. The people who are going in for these appointments are not illegal.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do other than to say, this is what I saw with my own eyes in just that short period of time that we were there, that we weren't in Minneapolis where there's, things happening on the street. This is happening quietly and just right under our noses. And I don't know what to do with this now. I want to do something. I know we all want to do something, but I feel like right now what I can do is just tell the story and tell what's happening. And the volunteer, she showed us the paperwork that they give the families once they show up after their loved one has been detained, with the QR codes that teaches them how to track which concentration camp their family member has been taken to.
That's important. That's the language that the volunteers use. They don't call it a detention center. They call it a concentration camp.
So that's where they take people. Well, then not only that, but then the family, there's another QR code where the family can put money in their loved one's quote unquote account so that they can get water or toothbrushes or food, because the food and water we've all been hearing, that's being provided has bugs. The water's gray and dirty and all of these things. So people are having to provide money. And if you don't have the money, like for women, for example, if you don't have money, you can't get sanitary products.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're menstruating, you're bleeding all over yourself. It's just so unbelievably cruel, which I realize is the point.
Mm-hmm. So, Missy, you're exactly right. That indeed is the point of all of this, to dehumanize not only the individuals themselves, they've been doing that for quite some time, just in the rhetoric that they've used to identify these individuals, but also to dehumanize the process itself. This is happening here in the United States of America. This is intentional. It's cruel. Here's the thing that Americans need to understand. We are going to be held accountable. We're already being held accountable of what's going on globally with our foreign policy in Greenland and in Venezuela. But now what's happening here, I mean, this is terrifying, and it should infuriate anybody who hears these stories. And like you said, I'm the one that's making commentary on this. You have just basically stated what you saw with your own eyes
Right.
and heard with your own ears. And it is disgusting and deplorable. And we've got to do something about this. And so I stand beside my fellow clergy with pride. I cheer on our volunteers, and I'll do everything I can to make certain that this does not continue. But it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of sacrifice on all of our parts.
We cannot continue to let our friends, our neighbors, our family live in denial of what is going on.
Right.
And the realities that other people are suffering through.
Mm-hmm.
You made the point about dehumanization, and I there was a powerful testimony from, was Elia Rahman,
Mm-hmm.
who was detained in Minneapolis on her way to a doctor's appointment. And she tells, if you haven't seen it, you need to go watch this, when she testified, I believe, before Congress. When she was in the concentration camp, she said, I continued to hear the words bodies, because that's how agents refer to us. We're bringing in a body. They're bringing in bodies, 7 or 8 at a time. Where do I put them? We can't use that room. There's already a body in there. She said, you have no reason to believe you will make it out alive if you are already being called a body.
Yep.
And so that speaks to the dehumanization that you were talking about. And so the people who are working within the system are being desensitized to what they're even doing to fellow human beings. It's just very scary.
It is. So it was quite the weekend for us, filled with a myriad of emotions. Felt like I was on a roller coaster, high on Sunday night, and then very much a low on Monday morning. But, even in that low, we saw good work and good people doing some incredible things. And I think that is what I wrote a letter to our sons this week and told them that after everything we have seen, I still have hope, because the migrants themselves, the resolve is still strong. They still believe that eventually justice will prevail. And if they believe it, then I have to believe it too. And so I stand beside them and keep fighting this good fight that we're in. So, quite a weekend.
When we asked, our friends that we went with, why do people show up for these appointments? Because there's a likelihood they're going to be detained. And a very good, dear retired minister friend of ours just kind of said, he said they still, at the end of the day, have hope that they will get to work through the process and this will be resolved.
Yeah. Heartbreaking, infuriating, but also inspiring because of their spirit. And so I will continue to fight alongside them and fight for their rights and humanity. So quite a weekend, myriad of emotions, roller coaster, if you will. But earlier in the week, we sat down with author and satirist Becky Garrison, who's got a new book out titled Gaslighting for God, a satirical guide to save yourself from spiritual narcissists.
Yeah, so obviously narcissism and narcissist is a real buzzword in our society today. It bugs me a little bit because I think we're always so quick to say so-and-so is a narcissist or this person's a narcissist. But what I think I gleaned from the book and from our conversation is how to recognize those narcissistic tendencies and behaviors that have been used to abuse within religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought it was a very interesting book and a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it is. And it's well researched, a lot of good citations in it that Becky talks about in our interview. So Missy and I will be right back with Becky Garrison. Hi, I'm Mitch Randall, CEO of Good Faith Media. We're a nonprofit dedicated to inclusion for all, freedom for all, and justice for all. And we invite you to support us in this work by becoming a Good Faith Advocate. Everyone who donates $50 or more per year becomes a Good Faith Advocate. You'll get our free quarterly magazine, discounts at our bookstore, access to other exclusive content, and more. You'll also be supporting media content and journalism that makes a difference. Consider becoming a Good Faith Advocate today. at goodfaithmedia.org. Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got a very special guest with us. As a religious satirist, Becky Garrison served as senior contributing editor at the Wittenberg Door from 1994 to 2008 and has been on its board of directors since its relaunch in 2021. She's the author of 9 books, including Jesus Died for This, A Satirist's Search for the Risen Christ, and Distilled in Washington, A History. She also co-edited a book of love letters written by partners of trans folks to their loved ones and contributed chapters to about a dozen other books. She lives in the Pacific Northwest, where she covers the region's craft culture, including cider, beer, wine, spirits, cannabis, CBD, psychedelics, and the regional festival scene. Her newest book is titled Gaslighting for God, a satirical guide to save yourself from spiritual narcissists. Becky, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Thank you.
So, Becky, welcome to Good Faith Weekly. Thank you so much for joining us. I do have to tell you that Mitch was near insistent that I bow to you when we came on today.
At least a curtsy.
At least a curtsy, because you are a descendant of one of his heroes, Roger Williams.
Mhm.
So I want to know if you would first start out talking about your background, including your connection to him. But secondly, how did you end up using satire as a tool to critique religion?
Well, in my family, I grew up in a family of alcoholics, extended family of alcoholics. And also, I've now discovered through the research into narcissism, they also had very strong narcissistic qualities. You know that because an alcoholic, when they have a true come to Jesus moment, or whatever you want to say, they're stop drinking, a new person emerges. Well, guess what? If you get the same old, I don't give a damn about anybody but myself, you're dealing with someone who also had narcissistic traits who happened to drink. That was my family. I also came from a family of academics and clergy. That starts with a very good person, Roger Williams, a religious pioneer who, thanks to my family, I knew nothing about him except I was related to him until I started publishing. And I'd already published my first book, Red and Blue God, Black and Blue Church, which was a critique of the need for church and state separation. It was then that I learned that his work paralleled mine.
Oh, wow.
I grew up Episcopalian. We don't read Baptists. We just don't touch the Baptists.
Right.
So Roger Williams was a forgotten pioneer. He was an example of someone who came along 150 years too late. In the same way that, Tyndale, why did Tyndale end up getting, killed, whereas Martin Luther was allowed to do his own translation? It has to do with, did you arrive at the right part of history where you're not going to be quite so persecuted? Had Roger Williams come 150 years later, then he would have been along with the founding fathers. His beliefs are very much in sync. But unfortunately, Parliament chose to ban and then burn his book. So there's like 1 or 2 copies left around. He's one of these forgotten pioneers. If you really start looking what he did, and that's why I wrote an earlier book, Roger Williams' Little Book of Virtues, because I wanted to figure out how you could be so radical in your beliefs, but yet be such a decent human being that even John Cotton, who hated him with a love and passion like nobody's business, still said he was a good person. How can you engage and stay? Because I don't do a very good job of this. A lot of us, it's very hard to be loving and respected while also stating a view that nobody else at that time believed.
Yeah. So, Becky, before we dive into the book on narcissism, which is brilliantly put together, I do have to ask you this question as a humorist. Now, this is breaking news, I know. We are living in an upside down world. And so, as a humorist, how difficult is it to write satire these days? Because to point out the absurdity of the absurd has to be really, really difficult.
I would say that, first of all, there's a difference between being a humorist and a satirist. And that a humorist is there to entertain. A satirist, I would say a satirist is there to expose the imbalance of power through the tool of satire. So he functions as a court jester. And I think right now the difficulty is that with an increased polarization, we've all lost our mind. So I went through this through the lens of narcissism, I found a new vehicle for how I can express this, because we have both sides on the extreme left and the extreme right, especially the extreme right, where we have completely gone banana boat. I mean, people are not willing to even engage the other person. They other the other. This person is, to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk, it's just as bad as celebrating the death of Renee Good or Alex. You do not. That is just we've lost our sense of what brings us and binds us together in our common humanity. So as a satirist, what I'm trying to do is say, look at the extremes on both your sides, for both progressives and for conservatives. Look at what is being done. How can we come together in our shared humanity? And that's the starting point that I look at is we're dealing with people. If we say, once you say someone is not human, it gives you the right to do all kind of unspeakable things to that person. And we need to reclaim this. And as we're being seen with the Epstein files, I'm just thinking with each new revelation, I'm looking at what Noam Chomsky's lack of an apology, and then you look at what Phil Yancey, people are still centering this on themselves. They're not willing to realize that I harmed another person, that my actions had an impact. And how do we, the beginning in satire can begin to expose to people, show them what this is what spiritual narcissism is. This is what we're dealing with. And once you can see that, now you can start to unpack this. And how do you find people that don't do this? So in many ways, it's using, as far as using satire, I don't know how else you can look at this and say, this is so ridiculous. You have to just poke fun of it. And that's the tool that I'm using right now.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, that's a great segue to talking about the book specifically. So I want to begin our conversation with kind of an overarching question. You mentioned how narcissists find a home in the Christian industrial complex. Will you define what that is for us and how that environment is really fertile for narcissists to thrive?
Well, I think that in addition to the Christian industrial complex, I want to call it the money mindfulness movement. I did not invent that term. Warren Cole Smith and others did. What it describes is that there is a system that produces number one hits. And in the past, I mean, this is, you could do a whole segment on the collapse of publishing in general. But what this basically refers to is the push is for platform over prophecy. The Christian book publishing company wants you to, as quickly as you can, this is the way the market is today, become number one. Do whatever it takes to get the most money in book sales. I even had a progressive best-selling author say to somebody that I know, it doesn't matter what I believe, it matters what sells.
Wow.
Someone else has said, I don't like criticism, it affects my book sales. So you're not willing to take any chance, any possibility that could affect your ability to sell books. Meaning you're not going to say that controversial thing that will tick off the Templeton Foundation, so therefore you won't get money.
Yeah.
You don't want to tick off the Lilly Foundation. Oh, there goes your money. So whoever your personal pocket is, whatever the stream is where you're making your money, you'll be as prophetic as you need to be until it impacts your book sales.
Wow. So let's just get down to the point. And how do you define a spiritual narcissist? Because that word narcissism is being thrown around a lot these days. So how would you define it?
Okay, I agree. Too often when they say narcissism, what they really mean is egotistical or self-centered. What narcissism is a personality disorder whereby the person cannot experience empathy or compassion for another person. They can only think of themselves. They have a grandiose sense of themselves. They are superior to other people. Not that I'm smarter than you, which some people may say, but I am a better person than you are. But they also have a lack of self-awareness for how their actions impact others. They do not, there isn't a case of where someone's a psychopath. They may actually enjoy inflicting pain. The narcissist just doesn't care. This is what I want, and who else doesn't get it is regard. A spiritual narcissist is one who uses the tools of the spiritual profession. They use language. They use the symbolism, anything connected to the church. It's in particular your salvation. If you do, we have this group that has a new way of being, a new kind of Christian. We have the traditional value system. Whatever their moniker is, this is what everyone must believe in order to be part of this group. And if you do not subscribe to what the leader believes, you start questioning this. Ergo, meaning you're questioning the funding streams, you are cut out and cast aside.
So is there a delineation, and it could be a fine line, is there a delineation between someone who's just really self-absorbed and a narcissist?
Yeah, and one of the questions I tell people is if you are asking if you're a narcissist, odds are you're not. I mean, ask anybody when I'm in the middle of a book production or I'm in the middle of a book promotion. There are days when I can get full of myself, but I have an accountability group who'll be like, okay, Becky, go take out the trash, or go a way to deflate that whole ego sense of self.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who has a narcissistic streak cannot do that. I mean, here's a good example. I was talking with a progressive thought leader, and who thinks very highly of herself. And I was discussing, this is 2008. I was talking about how excited I was for the rise of webinars, because the technology was just finally in 2008 getting good enough to where you could do webinars. I said, just think of what this will do for new forms of church. All the people that cannot afford thousands of dollars to attend an in-person conference, they now get to hear this stuff for relatively cheap and possibly even free with some scholarships and whatnot. Her response was, this is going to impact my frequent flyer miles.
Oh,
ouch.
That's a bad look.
That is a bad look.
So all of a sudden, but see, here's what happened. You had that reaction. I used to have that reaction, but then I realized I'm dealing with a narcissist. This is how they roll. And it tells me, one, I need to avoid that person. So I start looking out for signs. Are there signs, like, do they at least care to have some degree of empathy?
Yeah.
I mean, someone who is concerned about new forms of church would be on some level excited that more people can participate. The fact that they're going to lose frequent flyer miles would not be first on their top of list.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing you notice. All of a sudden, they'll be talking a lot about their book stats, their book numbers, how they're performance-wise. When they do an event, where does the money go?
Right.
Then that's the key thing. Follow the money. Is the money going to an actual ministry? Can this ministry survive if this person departs? Is this totally a person-focused ministry, or is this kind of being a bit more collective? And it can be hard to discern, especially in a collaborative kind of progressive setting where everybody's saying, oh, this feels so good, this feels so fantastic. Then you look at it, nope, it's pretty much a one-man show. It just is disguised as a curated experience open to all, but it really isn't.
So a large part of the book is you kind of categorizing different types of narcissists, and it's really well done. So I've got two questions for you regarding that section. One, could you describe to our listeners kind of what is the narcissist that you might be the most unexpected narcissist that people might run into? And then on the other end of that spectrum, what would be the most dangerous narcissist that we need to be watching out for?
There's two narcissist types that are the most hardest to spot, because everyone can tell the over-the-top P.T. Barnum showman, whether you're, the Naughty Bolts Weber, Mark Driscoll, Rob Bell, the whole superstar, the person doing that's pretty obvious to catch. And anyone who thinks you're going to have a relationship with one of those types of people, you go there for entertainment. That's a show for pure entertainment, but it's the communal and victim narcissists that are hardest to determine. The victim is hard because initially they do have a really legitimate sob story. Bad things have happened to them, but rather than getting the help, whatever help they need, they rely on other people. They poor pitiful me. And you realize your heartstring goes out to them. You want to help them, but all of a sudden, after a while, you realize I'm not getting anything back. If I have anything to do, their problems are worse than yours. They're never there for you. So they're always persecuted. They're always under, and if you have the same persecution complex, like especially, you've been persecuted by the patriarchal culture or whatever that you share with them, you too have had your own Me Too, Church Too experiences. And then you realize it's not going to get you better. Yeah. They benefit financially, emotionally from being stuck in a victimhood mood. There is a lot of benefit in that. But the communal narcissist is the one that just absolutely, I have endorsed communal narcissists and had to go, oh my God, I am so sorry. Multiple times, because they give you the illusion, this is a community together. Yeah. We're enlightened beings. We're going to go on this Buddhist, tantric, new kind of Christian, exploring new forms of faith. We're doing atheism. We're doing pyrotheology. We're doing all this like lovely, expansive, beautiful stuff. And then you realize it was all words. This is same old. We're just basically,
interesting.
It's not really, nothing is really changing at any fundamental level.
Yeah.
And that's when people tend to leave and go, this is not working. There's nothing, you're having a good feel-good buzz, but nothing really changes.
Right.
So expand a little bit on what are some signs and give us maybe some examples of things that people should be aware of, or the red flags that are present that we may not pick up on initially, to spot this type of person?
One thing I try to do with somebody when I'm first getting to know them is I try to set a little simple boundary. I'd say I'm not available to do this, but I can do this. A normal person, not a narcissist, might be a little ticked at you. Like I really could use that help, but they're not going to go ballistic. All of a sudden, the narcissist will just ghost you. The moment they'll use you, and you feel good about this. I'm really helping this ministry. The moment you're not available, it's as though you didn't exist. One thing I look for is who are the key players in a church, and if all of a sudden one of them is missing, or they're being discussed in a derogatory manner, I always ask myself, why? What did this person do that would warrant this Uber volunteer to all of a sudden speak out? We tend to still favor the perpetrators and the people in power instead of those in the pews. And just listen, because if someone is really, they always keep on saying, what about false allegations? I've been a reporter since 1994, and I can count on one hand the number of false allegations I've uncovered.
Yeah.
I cannot remember how many times someone told me something, no one believed them. So I think part of it is just getting yourself into a mindset where you can start to believe when you start to hear things that sound a little bit amiss. And one of the biggest things I see is just seeing the ultimate authority in that particular place.
Yeah.
And do you have any voice to do anything? Or are you only there as long as you're good in service to help them out?
Going back to what you said about believing people, I feel like sometimes the hardest person to believe is yourself. When you're in some sort of relationship with a person like this. And so just trusting your own eyes, trusting your own gut, and not allowing someone to gaslight you is the most challenging thing, I think.
Yeah, and especially because for a lot of us, we have to be acknowledged. And I say this almost jokingly, but it's really not that funny. We have to acknowledge that we're in a period of intense trauma. Anyone who tells me they have not experienced the impacts of trauma over the past, since 2020, is in denial, has their own set of psychological issues. Their coping mechanism has been to live in a state of denial. So I am excited by the research into the latest somatic therapies. I would ask people, one way you can really tune into this is to be practicing self-care. I noticed that now that I did EMDR, and now that I'm much more confident in myself, I don't attract narcissists anymore. As an empath, I was a narcissistic magnet. I love to help people. I was an Uber volunteer. I had to deal with, why did I have this compulsion to be needed, to be held? And it stemmed from I realized that my own family is non-existent. I do not have, and a number of other growing people are realizing our families were not healthy. We need to separate from them. But in that quest, we can often become I don't say desperate, but in search of community. We can become very vulnerable to someone giving us the family that we didn't have, giving us, if our job security isn't what it used to be, here's a place where we could actually do something and make a positive contribution. So a lot of it, and my friend Brad Sargent, who's a futurist, talks about this a lot, and I mentioned this in the book. What have you done to take care of yourself so that you're in a position so you're not going to fall victim? It's a matter of self-preservation for your own sanity. And the better spiritual health and physical health and mental health you're in, the less likely you are to become fodder for someone to take advantage of. Because you just, all of a sudden, you see something that I look back on situations where I was an Uber volunteer going, I would never have done that now. Yeah. I know better. Right. I know that I'm being used. I know that they wanted me for what I could bring to the table, not what I was as a person. They didn't want me. They wanted my skills and talents.
Yeah.
It's easy to see how this is a very tricky wicket when you come to the church, because the church is largely exists, with volunteers. And so that's a really interesting point that you make.
Yeah.
But there are communities where you are making a serious difference.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's the question is also how, with empathy and compassion. I mean, is that conditional? I mean, are they okay? Like when I had this one fancy church I went to, and I remember giving a prayer request because my grandfather was dying, and he was the last member of my extended family. So when he died, I was going to be the oldest member in my immediate family, of my generation. So I was pretty upset. I remember leaving this prayer message. I never got anything back. Nobody contacted me. And all of a sudden, about a month later, I got a bill for the rest of my pledge saying, we noticed you haven't pledged, and here's the rest of your bill. And I remember running into a member of the vestry, and he said, I haven't seen you around church anymore. I said, this is why I chose another church.
Yeah. Oh my
So I
goodness,
think,
Becky.
and that was a hard lesson to me, but
Sure.
I began to realize, and if I have had other experiences where I was out looking for a new church, and I did this again for Episcopal Church, sent out about 25 emails, just seeing, almost every single one of them, the first thing they said to me was a request to pledge.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, I
Wow.
think it really was, and the one church I chose was this one woman. It was a Lutheran church. I'm Episcopalian. Luther was not my first option, but she actually wrote me a nice little note saying, hey, you want to do coffee?
Mm,
That's the place that I went there for only about 6 months because it was Lutheran, and
sure.
being Episcopalian, the theology wasn't quite right for me, but the fellowship was amazing.
Right. Right.
And I think that's what you look for. Does somebody say, hey, you want to grab coffee? Can I get to know you? And
Right.
even in a big church, is the welcoming committee really welcoming?
Yeah.
And some of them are. I'm not trying, but I think at the institutional level, this is what I've realized from Jesus Died for This, which I started in 2008 to now. I believe the institutional church cannot be redeemed at this point. I
Right.
think our institutions are just too corroded, too corrupt. But at the grassroots level, some people are doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Agreed. There are some amazing communities of faith out there.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we have run into, Becky, has been individuals who have withdrawn from organized religion, the institutional church, and really for the blatant reason of suffering trauma, and especially at the hands of narcissists. So, what advice do you have for them? Because a lot of them still are spiritual people, but just don't want to have anything to do with the institution, or leaders that lend themselves to be narcissist. What advice do you have for them in this journey towards wholeness as they come out of this environment of narcissism?
Well, in fact, that was the second chapter of the book. I
Mhm.
started saying to them is that once you look at the word church holistically, which is a gathering of the people that are there to take care of each other and express concern, where then that opens up a whole other arena. For example, here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a very strong Celtic sense of spirituality here. This is not the academic anti-God movement at all. But what there are people saying, where do I go where people care about me? They care that I exist. They want me to be there. And here, in one example here, I found here in the Pacific Northwest that a lot of times the brew pubs and tasting rooms, they're not just a place to get together but they're a place where people come together in community. They're now some of them are offering non-alcoholic options, so people
Right.
can come together in a sense of community. We go to a place like, for example, Christoph Farms here, which is run by Nick Christoph. They have a farm shed where they invite people to come in, experience the land. They have wildlife cameras. You can see how the wildlife, the floral, the fauna interact with the property. So this is the bear that's eating the apple from which the cider is going to be picked. That's going to be,
Wow.
and it's a whole process of this is something. How do you connect yourself to nature this way? We have Masara Winery here. It's run by a Persian immigrant who has the amazing immigrant story. He now runs I think close to 500-acre winery. He sells grapes to 18 other people. There's an immigrant experience today where an immigrant is producing amazingly world-class Pinot Noir that is sold to multiple wineries, thus spreading the news around. And when I walk into his winery, I get a sense of Persian hospitality
Yeah.
that people know that Masara means house of wine, and they call wine the intersection of your sun, the liquid sunshine. And there's something magical that happens. It's been happening for thousands of years where people get together for a meal, where they get together to celebrate a glass of wine. And I've been write numerous articles on Momontazi from Masara Winery because he's, to me, represents the ideal immigrant experience of someone who takes his experience. He was able to have an immigrant experience, and he shares it by doing fundraisers that help the other immigrants in the area who are just like him. And unfortunately, with the ice raids happening here in the valley, that spirit it's been very hard and very trying. But there's a number of people that are trying at the grassroots to see what they would do. So I'd ask people, look in your community. Don't look to see where the places with the steeple and the cross and whatnot. Where are you seeing people gather together, trying to do good? There's a lot. Where are you finding local fundraisers are happening? Where are the grassroots happening? In music here, people come together, and all of a sudden you don't think, okay, who'd you vote for? What'd you support? No, it's like, I love this music. And once you're in a state of music, where like music or wine, beer, cider, distilled spirits, once you're in that space where you're discussing something that isn't polarizing, now you got something in common. And once you develop that, build that up, now can you have the hard conversation?
Yeah, I love that.
You know, I think one of the celebratory reasons, and there is a shift that's starting to happen. I'm looking at the Super Bowl. 6.1 million people wanted to watch whatever the hell Kid Rock was doing. And I would say they're estimating that Big Bunny probably topped
Kendrick Lamar, yeah.
Yeah, they're estimating that his appearance topped that, which is 133 million.
Right.
So people wanted to watch love over hate. I do believe that,
love that.
at the grassroots level, we want to do that.
Yeah.
But I do believe that at the national level and the institutional level, there's a lot of vested interest in keeping us divided. There's a lot of money to be made by saying, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a Baptist, I'm a Episcopalian, whatever I am, is to get away from those labels and say, we're people together, and what can bring us together.
The title of the book is Gaslighting for God, a satirical guide to save yourself from spiritual narcissists. Becky, you are a delight. We thank you for joining us this week on Good Faith Weekly. But before we let you go, we've got one last question for you, and Missy has the honor of asking it.
So, Becky, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So, in light of your work and our conversation today, what is your more to tell?
My more to tell is that I think by understanding the concepts of narcissism, you can easily, like, I can identify the signs that I'm around someone and I avoid getting triggered just by looking at them. So I think is continue following my Substack, Gaslighting for God. I'll be posting future articles as I apply the principles of narcissism to the current news cycles and seeing what can emerge from that.
Good advice. Becky, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And to our audience, we want to thank you for joining us this week. And until next week, keep living good faith. You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5.
And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.